Now let's look at the joint operating agreement problem on page 96. Now we're going to do example 2A. And this is a very similar scenario to example 1. So I'm just going to walk through it with you again. And it reads, again, in a simple scenario, A, B, C, and D each own a lease covering a quarter section in section 1. It's even the same diagram as the last one. They wish to join together to drill a well or wells on one or all of the leases. To accomplish this, they enter into a joint operating agreement with a contract area defined as all of Section 1. So on that cover sheet to the joint operating agreement, the contract area is going to simply say all of Section 1, and a 1/8 fraction is inserted in Article 3B. What will be their working and net revenue interest in any well drilled in the contract area? Now we're going to assume there's no gas unit. Before we had a 640-acre gas unit. Now it's only a 160-acre spaced oil well drilled on C, that is the southwest quarter of Section 1. So a couple of facts I want to point out to you. First of all, we're talking about this Article 3B. And the whole purpose of this particular example in the AAPL guide is to show you the impact of what fraction you put in that blank in Article 3B. That blank is designed to say, okay, we're all going to share in the royalties up until a certain fraction. And then whatever fraction you put in there, it's called an excess royalty. Let me just show you what that looks like. I'll just pull from my slide presentation. This is Article 3B. And the first part just is talking about Exhibit A, but it says, unless changed by other provisions, all costs and liabilities incurred in the operations under this agreement shall be borne and paid, and all equipment and materials acquired in operations on the contract area shall be owned by the parties as their interests are set forth in Exhibit A. Okay, so in this particular scenario, this is particular example, the Exhibit A is saying 25% each. Okay, we got that covered. In the same manner, the parties shall also own all production of oil and gas from the contract area, subject to the payment of royalties to the extent of, and here we put a fraction, in the example we're looking at it's 1/8, to the extent of 1/8, which shall be borne as hereinafter set forth. Now, what we're doing is, here's what it's saying. It's saying that all of the parties to the joint operating agreement are going to equally share in the payment of royalties. So we're, it doesn't matter what well it's on, what lease it's on, we're all going to pay the royalties. We're all going to share equally in the payment of royalties up to a certain amount. In this case, it's up to a 1/8 royalty. So if you're making a payment of a 3/16 royalty, for example, the owners, the other working interest owners, will pay that royalty payment up to 1/8, but anything over that 1/8, that additional 1/16, is going to be, you're going to have to pay that on your own. So the whole purpose of this problem is to show you that if the well is drilled only on your acreage and there's no pooling, and you have a fraction that's larger than 1/8, it's going to seriously adversely impact your net revenue interest. So that's the whole point of it. So what we're doing that's different now, that's different than the other problem, is we're limiting the pooled units. Oh, sorry. And to make that we're limiting the pooled unit. What's going on here? We're limiting that pooled unit to just C. It's only 160 acres. So what you're going to find is that because the well is not pooled, even though the landowner is even though the leasehold owner, and B and D are joint operating owners or working interest owners, their royalty owner, their landowner, is not going to get paid their royalty because they weren't included in this pooled unit, you see. So let me just show you what it looks like. And just like when we did the other one, the first question is, what is their specific working interest? So we're going to use the exact calculations that we used in example 1. Now, A owns 160 out of 640, B owns 160 out of 640, D same, C the same. So 160 over 640, that means they're each going to own a 25% working interest. Okay, so over here where it says working interest, we're just going to put 25% for A, 25% for B, 25% for C, and 25% for D. That is the working interest. Now the question is, does the well location determine the working interest? In other words, because we're going to put the well on C's lease, does that mean C has a greater interest in the joint operating agreement? And the answer is no. The joint operating agreement covers all of Section 1. So it doesn't matter where we put the well, the working interest is going to be the same. It's going to be 25%. So the answer to this question is no. Now we want to know the amount of the net royalty paid in the unit. Now you remember in example 1, what we did was we averaged all of the royalty fractions. That's because all of the royalties were pooled together. In this case, there's no pooling except for C. Well, C is not really pooled, but I guess they're a part of the 160-acre spaced well. So the only net royalty paid in the unit is going to be this 25% of C's interest. So C is going to be the only royalty owner that gets a lease. So that means A is not going to get paid a royalty interest because A is not part of the spaced unit. So A is going to get 0 royalty payments, A being the landowner. B's lessor is also not part of the spaced unit, so B's lessor will not get a royalty payment. C's lessor will get their 25% because the well was drilled and the acreage was spaced on their specific lease. So that means C is going to get a 25% working interest. And then D is going to get, again, 0 because D was not a part of the spaced unit. So now we want to ask the question, what is the royalty? It says the royalty is borne by, and what is the net revenue interest of each? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this presentation and I'm going to answer this in a new slide because it's going to be kind of a lengthy explanation. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this presentation, but I'm going to come back and answer example 2AE.